welcome to the webinar. NIGP's new Certified Procurement Professional Program is a proven pathway to invest in your long-term career growth. Presented by our CEO, Rick Grimm, along with Diane Daly, the Director of Certification Programs at NIGP. If at any time during the webinar you need technical assistance, please let us know in the Q&A box or the chat box. During the presentation, you may submit questions to the Q&A box on your screen, and we will take them during specified parts of the presentation. Rick, would you like to go and get us started?
Justin, I would be glad to. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us this afternoon. I'm watching the scroll of participants that have joined us on this webinar, some very, very dear friends, and I'm really glad that you are joining us to hear about this certification program called the NIGP Certified Procurement Professional, or CPP. I think it's important to remember that certification is a continuum of the pathways journey that NIGP embarked on actually in May of 2019 when we first announced pathways, and then did a fair amount of promotional on pathways at our Austin conference last August. But we have in this past year been building the content and the recognition programs that are anchored in pathways. So keep in mind what pathways is intended to do is to give you, the procurement professional, choice, flexibility, agility, and to select courses that and learning modules that are relevant to the work that you're doing today and your journey that you aspire to be in the future. So pathways is that integration of learning with recognition. As you see, everything that we do in pathways is built on this public procurement competency framework. It is the foundation of pathways. And then as the learning progresses, there are ways in which you earn certificates. So if you're not familiar with pathways, I would encourage you to take a moment to go into the pathways section. It's a microsite of NIGP's website that you can learn more about the Pathways program. But the learning modules are actually broken down into smaller chunks of learning that are relevant to what you do on the job. And for each one of those competency learning modules, you can earn a competency badge. Now, at times we bundle those competency badges into a course certificate. So for example, we currently have 5 course certificates. One of the 5 is on strategy and policy, and that course certificate is actually a bundling of 4 of those competency modules. As we continue up the ladder, now remember, this is all about choice. So if you're just looking for a competency badge in a particular area, Pathways does that for you. If you're looking for a course certificate that's bundled of competencies, that's a Pathways for you in terms of that certificate. And then we bundle 3 certificates to get to a designation. And Diane's going to talk about designations as she goes through the eligibility criteria. But we do have a designation on a public procurement associate designation, and that's that 3rd tier. That is a bundling of 3 course certificates, including the one that I mentioned on policy and strategy. Now, in addition to certificates, we also have specializations. So these are topics that are very, very contemporary. They are forward-thinking in terms of the issues that you're dealing with in public procurement. So our first release back last August was on procurement automation. This year, we'll probably release it in the September timeframe. We'll be on public construction. Imagine a specialization on how you buy goods and services during a pandemic. So that's the kind of concepts about the specializations. And certification, which is the issue that we're going to talk about this afternoon, is just a part of that continuum of learning and recognition. As we surveyed our members, they gave us a lot of information about how you want to learn. I don't want to go to a 3 to 5 day class and have some of that information, although it's important to public procurement, it's not important to me. It's not relevant to the job I'm doing. I want to be able to pick and choose which competencies are important to me. or as a supervisor, you may want to pick and choose the competencies that are important to the people that report to you. So learning, flexible. They also said in those surveys, we really want to be recognized for the learning that we've accomplished. And so this recognition happens within this context of certificates and specializations and certification. So what does make the CPP unique? 3 things to focus in on. 1, the target is really on that mid to executive level leaders. Remember, when we talk about leaders and leadership, we're not necessarily talking about people who supervise functions, but leaders would play throughout your organization. And this is really specific to those mid to executive level leaders. It's also focused on that public procurement competency framework. I'm going to talk about that in just a couple minutes, but that's the source. So it's a competency framework, not a knowledge-based framework. And the second is that the examination is focused on what you do in the workplace, on a full range of responsibilities that you have as you perform the public procurement function. So it's not necessarily focused on what you know, which is typically a knowledge-based certification, but this is a competency-based certification. So it's looking at your technical competencies and behavioral skills that you develop in the workplace. So how was the CPP developed? Again, talking about the public procurement competency framework, we actually partnered and did a collaborative work with the Public Spend Forum. Now, Public Spend Forum is a non-for-profit that received a grant from the Volcker Alliance. You may remember the name Paul Volcker. Paul Volcker was the chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank. And in that capacity, Paul Volcker was quite concerned that we have not created a prepared workforce in public procurement and contracting to manage the trillions of dollars that run through the economy. And so he really wanted to focus in, he and his alliance really wanted to focus in on those competencies that you need in order to be successful specifically in public procurement. Because after all, we're only spending $4.3 trillion in goods and services on an annual basis. So you can see how competency is so important. So we worked with the Public Spend Forum to identify this competency framework. Again, I'm going to go a little bit more detailed further on, but you can see there are 7 areas beginning with strategy, policy, sourcing, leadership, and then into business principles. As you develop a professional certification, you look at where the anchor is on that content, which is that competency framework, and then you bring together a group of subject matter experts, and they form what is called a practice analysis panel. And they begin to look at what skills would be important for you to know in order to meet these various competencies that are in those 7 areas. And so the panel experts came together, they created a survey, and the purpose of the survey is to do a piece of research which assesses the frequency and the importance of the activities that someone that is targeted in this audience, the mid to senior level leader, would need to know, both the frequency and the importance of the activities. I can't overemphasize this enough because the survey and the results of the survey, you had over 1,200 people responded to that survey. It is that survey that determines the key eligibility decisions. Who is eligible to be part of the earning of the CPP? And what's the exam content? So I always like to say, this is not done by 2 people in a garage that just comes up with this crazy idea of what certification looks like. There's a very, very structured research component that drives those eligibility and that exam content. So the exam content, as you can see, looks very, very similar. It's in the same 7 focus areas of the competency framework. And there are 43 specific competency statements that have been covered in this exam. I'm going to mention it in just briefly, but if you go to online into the website, NIGP website, you can download a copy or just read it from your screens, the certification handbook. It will identify each of those 43 specific competency statements. But the survey, the practice analysis survey, determined the weighted percentages on each of these categories. So you can see that of this exam, 10% is going to be on strategy, 14% on policy, et cetera, et cetera. Now, by the way, I just recertified dual certification on my CPPO, CPPB. I'm very proud of that. I also, when I think back, and that was a few years ago, for those of you who know how old I am, I've been around a couple of years around the block. But most of the stuff that I learned in those programs was really on kind of policy and planning and sourcing and contract administration. But what you see here, there's almost half of this pie that are focused in on the totality of functions that we perform in public procurement. So strategy, business principles, and leadership. And leadership is 26% of this exam. So let's take a leadership as an example of these competency statements. So here's 6 competencies that come from that area of leadership, like creating and fostering a professional ethical culture and continuous improvement and professional development activities. These are the competencies that you would need to know in order to earn that CPP. And again, it's not a knowledge base, but it's how you apply the knowledge and the behaviors into the competency-based exam. So that's an example how in each one of these 7 areas, there are competency statements. And these are 6 of the 43 that I mentioned earlier. And then here's how the breakdown is. So again, you take the 7 focus areas on the left-hand side, and you can see that there are 43 competency statements, and 11 of the 43 are in leadership, and 6 are in business principles, and 6 are in sourcing. What you'll also notice is that in the midsection, mid-column, there about 19 of these 43 technical aspects were covered in the CPPO and the CPPB exams. And I mention this because there may be individuals on this call who have already earned their CPPO or CPPB, and therefore, rather than having to take the entire exam, because they have already demonstrated the mastery in those 19 competency statements, they only have a bridge exam, which is 24. But what you'll notice is that about a little bit more than half of the CPP exam is based on new content that is not covered in the CPB or the CPPO exam. A little bit about the format and delivery. When the Certification Commission came together, they wanted to create a 2-part modular exam, what we call Module A and Module B. And you will see from this diagram that those candidates who want to obtain their CPP, to bridge to it, they only are going to take Module B. Again, that's about half the exam. And if you're not certified CPPO or CPPB, then you're going to take both modules, A and B. But here's the flexibility and the benefit of a modular exam. You can take both modules at the same setting, or you can break them up. So we have testing periods, for example, in August. So on August 1st, I could take Module A, and I could take Module B on August 31st. Or I can even break those up into different testing periods. I could take A in August, and I could take B in November. Now, I don't know how many of you are like me. I am a terrible test taker. So for me, I love the flexibility of focusing in on the content and being successful in Module A, and then converting over, once I get that done, converting over to Module B. Now, by the way, you can take those in any order. You can take B first, then you can take A. It doesn't make any difference. It's that flexibility. Now, each module then is independently scored. So again, if you're like me and not a very good test taker, I could be very successful in A and not be as successful in B, but I've already passed A. I don't have to retake that part of the exam again. So each module is independent. You can see that each module is going to have 80 multiple choice questions. If you're bridging, CPPO and CPP certificants take the same bridge exam. And then we're offering 4 test periods annually in the months of February, May, August, and November, the full months of those 4 months. And then we will continue to have the testing that takes place at a third-party testing center, brick and mortar. Diane's gonna now spend a little bit of time to talk to you about the mechanics of eligibility and these questions that are on your mind, but I really can't overemphasize the importance of you looking at that certification handbook. As you can see, it's gonna walk you through what's the program all about, why should you certify, what's the eligibility, what's the exam content, testing periods, recertification, appeals, code of conduct, a whole enchilada here of this program is in that certification handbook. And by the way, as Diane will remind you, as part of your application process, you're going to indicate that you have read the content of the certification handbook. It's very important that you know how this program has been developed. So I'm not seeing any questions. I'm kind of giving you a baseline, an understanding that certification is a part of pathways and how that the CPP program is broken into the support of the 7 focus areas and the 43 competency statements. But Justin, do you have any questions that are coming up before we turn this over to Diane?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions, Rick.
Okay. By the way, just as Justin mentioned, go ahead and post your questions in there. I'm going to be monitoring them, and Justin's going to be monitoring them as Diane walks you through the program. We'll try to get to all of your questions this afternoon. So Diane, please take care.
Hello, everybody. I'm Diane. Thank you for joining us today. And as Rick mentioned, the handbook is going to be your friend. I'm going to be another friend. I'm always interviewing for new people to talk with. So you'll see my email address at the end. Feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. But now we're going to take a look at the 5 big questions that you might have. Am I eligible? How do I apply? How do I schedule my exam? How do I prepare for my exam? And how do I maintain my NIGP-CPP once I've earned it? All right, so eligibility is formal education from an accredited institution and relevant work experience aligned with the technical competency statements. So work experience has to be within the past 10 years, and your education is formal education. There are no training hours required. So now let's take a look at if you are a current CPPO or a CPPB, or if you're within 1 year of the expiration date of your CPPO or CPPB, you can apply as a pathway app or a bridge candidate. And for this, there's no formal education required, no relevant work experience, no training hours. You just have to be a current CPPB or CPPO. And you would only take 1 exam module B, which is the bridge exam. And so for CPPOs and Bs, you're going to fill out the online application. There are no application fees through June of 2021. The abbreviated exam, module B only, no initial exam fee. So through June 2021, when you first apply, you'll register, you'll get the free application fee, and you'll get your free first testing free. So you will register for a window, you'll register for exam module B. There's no fee for testing, but if you do need to retest, that would require the retest fee. And you also receive access to complimentary NIGP bridge resources, prep resources, an online instructor-led course or there is a free online prep guide. And then additional recognition, the CPP, the new NIGP-CPP, complements existing certifications such as the CPPO or the CPPB. All right, so we're going to take a look at the 6 unique eligibility pathways. And these were all based on practice analysis research. And these are the pathways we're taking a look at now. I see someone's asked a question about the retired education. We'll see that on these pathways. There are sliding scales. So the higher your education, the lower number of years you have to have in full-time work experience. So pathway A, it's a graduate degree, and it has to be related to public administration, public policy, supply chain, procurement, or economics. And then with a graduate degree in these areas, you only are required to have 24 months of procurement experience, public or private, purchaser or seller, but it has to be within the past 10 years. So that's something to keep in mind. All work experience is full-time procurement within the past 10 years. So pathway B would be the next eligibility pathway. And you can see the education levels dropping a little bit and the years of experience is increasing. So with pathway B, bachelor's degree, any discipline, and a graduate level certificate in public administration, public policy, supply chain, or procurement. The graduate level certificate, that is something that you can earn from a college or university. There are several that have these opportunities. Cal State does. And so it's a certificate that usually is a couple of years on top of a bachelor's degree. And then 3 years or 36 months of procurement experience, public or private, within the past 10 years. Then we go to pathway C, a bachelor's in any discipline and 48 months of work experience. So you can see from A, B, C, the educational level is lowering a little bit, but the years of experience are increasing. And then we'll take a look at the next 3 pathways.
Hey, Diane, let me ask a quick question here on pathway A, because this comes up frequently. If you have a graduate degree in a master's in business administration, it's not listed here. But you do find that some business degrees have a concentration in issues like supply chain or procurement or economics. And in that particular case, that would qualify, correct?
That is correct. If you have an MBA and the concentration is specifically in public administration, public policy, supply chain, procurement, or economics, then your MBA would qualify. But again, the concentration has to be in those 5 areas. If you don't have a graduate degree with a concentration in one of those 5 areas or in that, we're finding individuals are then applying under pathway C. You need a little bit more experience. But again, the NIGP-CPP is for mid to executive level leaders. So we're not really finding many people who the degree doesn't work for pathway A, but they've got enough experience for pathway C. So that is definitely something to look at. If your graduate degree doesn't quite meet it for A, take a look at your work experience in the last 10 years. And now let's take a look at the last 3 pathways. Pathway D, that's a 2-year post-secondary diploma or an associate degree, any discipline, or the NIGP Public Procurement Associate designation. And so with pathway D, that is attractive to many individuals because it's the 2-year diploma or the associate's degree or the NIGP Public Procurement Associate designation. And that is a new designation with pathways. And that is something that you can earn by bundling your certificates and things together. Rick, do you have a little bit more information about this specific designation?
The designation is, as I mentioned earlier, it's the bundling of 3 certificates, and it's on policy, Policy and strategy is one certificate. It is procurement analysis and planning is the second one, although I may have the exact title incorrectly. Sorry. And then the third one is on sourcing and contract administration. And so those are 3 certificates. And once you finish all 3, you automatically get the designation. The beauty of that is that because you have a kind of an exam process to attain each one of those certificates, there's no further exam. It's just an automatic recognition through that designation.
Thank you. That's great. Yes. And with Pathway D, you have to have 6 years or 72 months of full-time work experience in procurement within the past 10 years. And then Pathway E is another very popular eligibility pathway. No post-secondary diploma required at all. And it's 8 years or 96 months of procurement experience. And then Pathway F is the current CPPO or B, or lapsed within 1 year of the expiration date. So there's no formal education, no relevant work experience. And so if you have questions about the different pathways, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you and provide a little bit more information if you'd like. Now let's take a look at the full-time work experience verification for pathways A through E. The NIGP-CPP program, we are going to be applying for accreditation through ANSI ISO 17024. So the NIGP-CPP program was developed with very strict guidelines, following very strict policies governing certification programs. And part of that is for every piece of information provided on an application for eligibility, it has to be proven. So the candidate is going to have to obtain work experience verification. So you qualify your full-time work experience based on the applicable pathway, which pathway, how much experience. You can draw on any full-time procurement experience from the past 10 years. You can use multiple job titles with multiple employers if needed. I've seen applications where someone needs 96 months, their pathway E, and they've done that entire time at one employer with one job title. There are other people who have had 2 or 3 different employers and job titles to meet the minimum work requirements. So it just depends on where you are. And then for each job title to be qualified, you have to self-assess that you perform at least 20 of the 43 technical competencies. Now, these technical competencies will appear for you on your application, and then you just go through and you check mark, and you have to have at least 20 of the 43 that you performed, or if it's a past position that you performed, past tense. And then a self-assessment is going to be independently verified by a current or former supervisor or by your employer's HR rep. So what happens is, as a part of the application for your work experience, you'll identify the organization, your job title, your starting and ending dates, and then you self-identify at least 20 of the 43 technical competencies. And then you're also going to give us the name, the title, and the email address for a current or former supervisor or HR rep at that organization who can verify this. When you submit your application, employment verification emails are automatically sent to the individuals that you list as the verifiers. And what the verifier will see is your name, your job title that you provided, the starting date and the ending date. And they also get a list of all the technical competency statements that you identified yourself for that position. And then they will return that verification. It has to be a written verification. We hear from people who want us to contact an outside firm that will only over the phone verify the starting and ending date. But you actually need, we need the written email returned because a big part of the verification is the technical competency statements that you've identified. And we always recommend that you inform your current or former supervisor or HR person of their role and to let them know to watch for an incoming email. And you can also print off a copy of the technical competency statements that you self-selected so they know exactly what you've said. And if there are any questions, those can be addressed before the verification form is sent to them. Okay.
Yeah, Diana, one question that keeps on popping up is, these 43 technical competency statements. And I really think the best answer is to take some time after the webinar and go into the handbook and look and see what those 43 competency statements are about, because they're going to run the gamut from, again, that strategy out to leadership and business principles. So, when a question is one of those competency statements or several of those competency statements focused in on sourcing and contract management and contract administration? Yes. And it's the nice thing about this particular function about the relevant work experience is that on your online application, it literally will list the 43 and you're actually doing a checkbox to indicate that you do it. Now, as Diane mentions, this is a third-party verification process. And I will tell you that in some cases, a candidate says, yes, I do that. And the supervisor says, no, you don't. And so this is why we're really stressing number 6. Make sure that you and your supervisor or HR is on the same page so that you're both in agreement that that's part of your job responsibilities. So, Diane, questions that may be raised by any of our participants. Justin, you have anything that I think we lost?
Yeah, Rick, we had a couple of questions come into the Q&A box. Is the ultimate goal of the pathway to get the CPPB, CPPO, or is it actually beyond the CPPB, CPPO, since there are more areas taught and tested?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I would not see these as layered or sequential certifications. I would say that they are complementary. So if, for example, if you are already on a pathway to get your CPPO or CPPB, would strongly encourage you to continue on that pathway. As I showed earlier, about 50% of this exam is not in the O and B content. So if leadership is important to you, that's part of your career path that you aspire to be in a leadership role, then the CPP is very relevant to what you're looking for. But they are also not, again, I want to be very, very clear, these are not sequential steps where you get your B and then you get your O and then you get the CPP. It doesn't work that way. You have that total flexibility to come into this program without any other certifications. That's the comprehensive exam. Or you could come through the pathway of an O or B. That's pathway F. That's the bridge exam. So I think it's really important that you look at the exam content and what the exam and what the designation represents.
And another popular question that seems to keep popping up, what is the process if your supervisor no longer works where you served in a certain position?
Right. I'll throw that very easy one over to Diane.
Well, what we're finding is you can contact the individual where they are now. If it was your supervisor and you've both moved on, you can list the individual as the verifier, and then under their job title when they return it, it would be contracts supervisor at blah, blah, blah. So we do have individuals who are going to supervisors who have moved to another company. And when the person returns the verification, they are returning it as former supervisor at XYZ company. I saw a question pop up: if your former supervisor is no longer living. I'm sorry to hear that. You would ask another person who was perhaps above your supervisor, or ask an HR rep who could verify your work experience. It's not possible for us to accept an employment experience unless it's been verified by the third party. So if your supervisor is no longer living, perhaps your supervisor or someone from HR. And that's why, you know, again, we recommend that the person you identify, you let them know that the work experience is required for the NIGP-CPP, and to provide to them the information that you have listed, the technical competencies that you've identified. You want to make sure that person can attest to this. So that's where you communicating outside the application with your verifier, that may be necessary if you're going back, you know, to 7 or 8 years ago. And then I saw another question, because of course I'm looking for the questions. The degrees for Pathway A. Pathway A is very specific. So someone asked if a degree, you know, a master's in political science would qualify for Pathway A. No. Pathway A is the least amount of work experience. So it has to be the highest level of education in procurement. And so for Pathway A, your degree has to be public administration, public policy, supply chain, procurement, or economics, or an MBA with a concentration in one of those 5 areas. So a master's in public administration, yes, that would qualify under Pathway A, and you would just need to verify the 2 years of experience. And then I see that someone has, I probably wasn't as clear as I should have been about the Pathway F, or the bridge candidates. If you're a current CPPO or CPPB, you only have to successfully complete 1 exam module instead of 2. So you do have to take and pass the test, and it would be exam module B, and that is the exam of the application and the technical competencies that are covered by the entire NIGP-CPP program that aren't covered in the CPPO or CPPB exam. So there are differences in the exams. The O and the B are knowledge-based, the CPP is application-based, the work that you do. So if you are a Pathway F bridge candidate, you will have to take and pass the exam B, and then the free resources for the bridge prep. Once you are an approved candidate as Pathway F, you're an approved bridge candidate, we will send you an approval email with information on how you can access the free prep materials. If you're a comprehensive candidate, which would be a candidate coming through pathways A through E, there are also prep materials, and you can access those anytime you want. It's up to you how you prepare, when you begin preparing. All of that is up for you. Justin, are there any other questions?
Yeah, I think one of the common ones that we see, though, and Diane, you have seen this as you've looked at applications, is that people will really try to focus in on Pathway A because they have a master's degree, but it's not in that particular area, the 5, concentrations. So most people are more than qualified in C because they can come in with their bachelor's degree, and it can be under any discipline, and 4 years of relevant work experience. And so that typically meets most of that criteria. But I think the question on a one-off is, you're going to get Diane's information at the end of the webinar. Give Diane a call, email her, tell her your situation. She can help you through that process. Yeah, let's go ahead because we want to catch up on the rest of this content if you're okay, Diane.
Yes. All right, so now we're going to take a look at how do I apply. There are no set deadlines. There's no late fees. You're going to apply online. Everyone will apply online. We recommend at least 30 days prior to the first day of the testing period. So our next testing period is August. So if you're interested in testing in August, I would jump on the application, very, very quickly. And so for pathways A through D, there are education requirements, and you're going to upload your diploma, or you can upload a transcript, but it has to show the degree conferred and the date it was conferred. For pathway E, there is no education requirement, so you're not going to upload anything there. For pathway F, that's the current CPPBs and Os, you are going to upload a copy of your current certificate, or if your certificate is hanging on the wall in your office and you don't have access to it right now, you can access the UPPCC database, take a screenshot of your record in the database, and you can upload that. And then you're going to register for your specific testing window, and then you will submit a payment. So if your pathway is A through E, you'll submit an application and testing fees. Pathway F, your application fee is waived, and so is your first testing fee. All right, so let's take a look at the NIGP-CPP online application and exam fees. So the bridge candidates, that's the pathway F, current CPPBs and Os, you get the complimentary application and the complimentary first testing fee through June of 2021. Beginning July 1st, 2021, the application fee returns to $150 and the testing fee is $100. And then if you're a comprehensive exam candidate, that's pathways A through E, your application fee is $150. And then the exam fees are $100 per exam module. So because you have to take and pass 2 exam modules, that would be $200. And then the retest fee, if anybody needs to retest, the retest fee is also $100. Okay. So how do I schedule my exam period and date? As a part of the application and registration process, you do the application, you submit it, a link appears on your screen and it takes you directly to registration and payment. So the pilot testing period, we piloted exam module B, the bridge exam module. That was piloted from April to June, and we did receive sufficient number of completed exams for us to undertake the standard setting or the setting of the pass-fail score. That will take place later this month, and we will have the results available in mid-August for anybody who did the pilot of exam module B. We are—
Hey, Diane, a quick question, because you know this much better than I. How many took the pilot module B?
Module B, the pilot was more than 70 candidates.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
And then we also did a short pilot window for exam module A. And we have extended the pilot for exam module A through August. The exam module A pilot window was only 2 weeks, and COVID-19 has taken all of us by storm. And so we are extending the pilot test period for module A. So that's pathway A through E candidates. But the really cool thing for you to pay attention here is if you apply and register and pay, and you select the August 1st through September 15th window, and only for exam module A have we extended the window through September 15th. if you actually go and take Module A during this window. At the end of the window, I'm going to take a look at every test that was completed, and then I will initiate a rebate of your $100 testing fee for exam Module A. So if you've not yet applied and you're coming through pathway A through E, I'd recommend you get hopping on that. Allow yourself plenty of time to do the application for your verifications to come back, and sit for the exam between August 1st and September 15th, and we will rebate your $100 fee. Now, if for any reason you register for that window and you're not able to take the test, we will not, of course, give you the rebate of the fee. And then the actual regular testing periods, we have 4-month-long periods each year. August 1st to August 31st, November 1st through 30th, and then we also have May and February each year. So this is to thank the individuals who are helping with the pilot of Module A. We're doing the $100 rebate. Okay, how do I schedule my exam period and date? You apply, you register, and you pay. If you're Pathway F, you're only going to apply and register. So you're going to select a testing window, and you're going to pay your testing fee. And so right now, the windows that are available are August and November. And, you know, keep in mind the pilot of Module A. Once your application is approved and we see that you have registered and your payment, if required, is complete, we will approve your candidacy if we're able to. You're going to receive an approval email, and then about 5 to 7 business days later, you receive an authorization to test email from our testing company. Sorry, I'm going to hang up my phone. Sorry. I don't know if that was bothering
I think it was.
you.
I think it was the Publishers Clearinghouse, Diane.
Probably not. It was probably someone wanting to talk to me about the election. I am interviewing friends, but not that kind. Okay, so when your application's approved, you're going to get an approval email, and then about 5 to 7 business days later, you get your authorization to test email from our testing administrator, Pearson View. And you will then be able to see all of their testing centers, and you'll be able to schedule an available appointment date and time within the window that you've selected. And then if you do not pass one or both of the modules, depending on how many exams you have to take, you get 3 opportunities within your 2-year application period. So your application is valid for 2 years from the date you're approved, and you have to pass your exams within that period. And then you can only take each exam module once during a window. So if you're unsuccessful, you would sign up for a future testing window, and then you would pay the re-examination or the retesting fee. All right, so do we have any questions?
Justin, do you have anything? I'm monitoring the chat and the Q&A. A couple questions are coming up in the later slides, Diane, so I'm not worried about those.
Okay.
Why don't we go ahead so we have plenty of time for the Q&A at the end?
Excellent. All right, so how should I prepare for my exams? NIGP has developed preparation and study tools. And so the first thing you want to do is understand the timelines. Your application's valid for 2 years. You get 3 opportunities to pass each module. So if you take exam module A and you're not successful, you can pay the retest and take it 2 more times during your 2-part period. And as Rick mentioned, exam module A and exam module B are separate. So if you pass exam module B, but you struggled with exam module A and you have to retake it, you only have to retake exam module A as long as you've passed everything within the 2 years. So it's a two-part modular exam based on the Public Procurement Competency Framework and the 43 competency statements. Again, take a look at the certification handbook online. That will give you the information there. Each exam module is 80 multiple choice questions, and you get 2 hours for each module. All right. So, NIGP Tools to help you prepare. For the bridge prep, as I mentioned, once you're an approved Pathway F candidate, in your approval email, we will send you information about how to access or how to obtain access to the free online prep guide. And that's going to be free through June of 2021, or the free online instructor-led prep course. Those are usually offered about 2 months before each testing window. And that course is going to be complimentary through June of 2021. And then for the comprehensive prep, that's available to anyone, particularly for Pathway A through E candidates. There is a digital prep guide. It's available for $150. And then there's an online instructor-led prep course, again, about 2 months before each testing window, and that's $395. So NIGP does have you covered, covered with prep. Okay, exam results.
So Diane, a real quick question on that is a kind of a self-assessment guide. NIGP has built one that's available for the O and B, and it kind of walks you through not the exam questions, but kind of examples of how questions are formatted based on the UPPCC body of knowledge. And so we're doing the same thing for the self-assessment guide for the CPP. It's under development now, and we're really looking probably at the end of September, 1st of October, when that will be available. So that's another way to help you prepare, because you can begin to think about, hey, I really got the sourcing piece fine, but I'm really kind of struggling with the leadership, and then I can begin to take you down those competency modules so you can hone up your skills and your competencies before you sit for the examination.
Exactly right. And everyone is different. I've had people contact me and ask me, how long will they need to prepare? Well, I think it depends on how long have you been working in the profession, how much experience and applicable work have you done in the different technical competencies. So everyone is very different, but NIGP has developed these resources that are available. Exam results. So for new test forms, including the pilot exams, which, we piloted exam module B, the bridge module, in April to June. Right now, exam module A, we had a little 2-week period in June. We're finishing that up in August, mid-September. So there has to be validation by the standards setting panel. And they will actually work and examine the data from the completed exams to come up with a passing and a failing score, where you have to be to pass, where you have to be to not be successful. So it takes about 6 to 8 weeks before the results are communicated. So for individuals who sat for exam module B, the bridge module, in the April to June timeframe, we will be, our plan is to send out the passing and failing results in mid-August. For individuals who are piloting exam module A, that window is going to be from August 1st to September 15th, in addition to the 2 weeks in June. And so we plan to send those score results out in October. And so we have to go through the standard setting to find out exactly what it is. And then after the pilots are completed, you will receive your pass or fail results at the conclusion of your exam at the testing center. So definitely for the November windows, individuals will find out their results at the testing center. And we also plan to report the pass-fail result, but the panel will also likely report performance by focus area. So because this is testing, we will never be able to tell you exactly what questions you got right, exactly what questions you got wrong. Generally with certification and testing, you can provide sort of general information. So a report out about how you performed in the main focus areas. All right. How do I maintain it? Well, you work very hard, you earn it. How are you going to maintain it? So you're going to recertify every 3 years, and you're going to earn a minimum of 36 contact hours of continuing education learning. And up to 25% of those 36 hours can be by developing, teaching, and instructing public procurement content. We've received questions from people who want to know how many hours do they get for volunteering at a chapter or for being a chapter member. The thing to keep in mind with the NIGP-CPP certification is you are being assessed on your knowledge and how well you do the work in the field. And so to recertify, you have to continuously build on your learning and how you do things and how you improve your performance. So all of the NIGP-CPP recertification contact hours are through continuing education or developing, teaching, and instructing. And we will have a retired status available, but you have to earn the NIGP-CPP first. I've heard from a few people who would like to just now be called the NIGP-CPP retired, but you earn it first, and then when you retire, there will be a retired status available to you. All right, and now we go to questions.
Thanks, Diane. Do you know if the agency will find out the results of someone's test?
Oh, that is a great question.
Great question.
No, certification programs have very strict confidentiality policies, and we can only communicate one-on-one with individuals. So if your agency pays your fees, they cannot, emphasis on not, contact us and ask where you are in the process. Have you passed? Have you failed? How many exams do you have left? It's strictly confidential. The employment verification, another person will verify that. Other than that, we don't talk to anybody else about your certification or your journey. When you earn the NIGP-CPP, no one will know unless you tell them whether you earned it by taking the exam one time or if you had to retest. There's also very strict firewalls with the NIGP staff. Myself and the certification team, we have access to all of the records, but Rick and the marketing team and other people at NIGP, they do not have access to any information. And we've all signed a non-disclosure agreement. So if your boss calls and wants to know how you're doing, I am very comfortable telling your boss that it is strict confidentiality and we can only communicate one-on-one. Sometimes people will send an email to me and they'll ask specific questions about where they are in the process, and then they'll copy 4 or 5 other people. When I reply, I will reply back to you and only you. I'll tell you, you can forward that on to anybody you want, but strict confidentiality. Once you become certified and a CPP, then we do release your name. But as you're going through the process, no one will be, we will not discuss any candidate with anyone except for the candidate himself or herself. I do see a question somebody asked, does your transcript have to be sealed? No, you're going to upload it yourself. So we do see unofficial transcripts, but the transcript has to show the degree that you earned and the date you earned it.
Yes, there's other questions about, and we had talked about this a little bit earlier. I think maybe I'm getting back area from you, Diane.
I'm sorry?
I was hearing back.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So we had a couple questions related to, I already have my OMB, why do I have to test? Well, as I mentioned earlier, about 50% of the CPP has never been tested in an ORB. And in order to meet ANSI standards, which is absolutely critical to NIGP, you have to perform a gap analysis. And the gap analysis is basically the difference between the content that is in the CPP and content for other certifications. So that would apply not only to the OMB from the UPPCC, but certifications that are offered by ISM, APICS, NCMA, et cetera. In order for the ANSI to accredit your program, you have to require the people who have not been, candidates who have not been tested on particular content to take that abbreviated test, which is called the bridge. Now, sometimes you will see that when in that gap analysis, they're about 90% the same, then you will see areas of reciprocity that if you have A, all you have to do is apply and I will give you B. But in this case, the gap is pretty significant. As I say, about 50%, a little more than 50% of this exam has not been on the OMB. Then there's been, questions about, how do I prepare for the test? I think it's really important that you spend some time in the certification handbook to see all of the 43 technical competencies. And I think you're the best person to go through that handbook and say, yeah, I know that. No, I don't know this. Yes, I know that. And for the areas where you need, some support, you will see a companion competency module that's available in Pathways to help you out. The idea really, again, with Pathways is to provide that flexibility for you to be able to go in and identify the competency modules that you need to work on. And if you've mastered it, don't worry about it, but go on those, 3 or 4 specific competency modules and really focus in on those classes. Most of them are, they're not doing them in person at this point because of COVID, but are available through instructor-led and also on demand. So that's what I would recommend you do. And if you really just want to wait until the self-assessment guide comes out in September, hey, listen, there's no rush here. If you want to wait until that guide comes out, because that's going to walk you through, if it's anything like the O and B self-assessment guide, it's about 100 questions. And so it kind of helps you really hone in on your areas of strength and shortcomings. And so you'll want to take a look at that as well. We constantly get questions about, Pathway A and Pathway C, and I'm kind of sorry that that's a little complex, but the reality is that as you go through your online application, one of the first questions they're going to ask is, are you applying for Pathway A, B, C, D, E, or F? If you select Pathway A and you say, I have a master's degree in X, and that's not one of the 5 that's required, then basically certification team, Diane and her team, will come back to you and say, sorry, this particular master's degree does not qualify for Pathways A, and then we'll move you to Pathway C. That's the logical approach that we have seen. Diane, I'm sorry I had to cut you off with a feedback, but you want to add to that at all?
No, I think we take a look at every application, and if we see that you've not completed the registration and the payment that's required, we'll send you information. If your employment verifications are taking longer than a few days, we'll go in and send a reminder email, and then we send an email to you to let you know we've done a reminder and you might want to reach out to the person. So we communicate with you through the process. If we have any questions or need any information, we're going to ask you. So we are there to assist you with the application and the registration and the payment parts, appointment scheduling, all of that. We can't help you pass the exam or take the exam, but we are there. And if we have a question for you, we're not going to hesitate to ask you. And so I would hope that you would feel the same way about us. If you've got a question, ask us. We're there for that reason.
Right. Another question we have on, if you're teaching, this is back on recertification, Diane. If you're teaching a procurement workshop within your governmental entity, will that count towards these continuing ed credit hours?
Yes, you can earn 25%, so that's 9. So you can earn up to 9 continuing education or contact hours. So how would that credit value be determined? You would determine, it would be based on the amount of time you spent to develop and make that presentation. So the first people will be recertifying 3 years from now. We'll have more specifics available, but basically you'll just keep track of the amount of time you spent in the development and then in the presentation. And any questions like that, feel free, you know, like Rick had said, my email will be at the end. And then I see a question, I'm sorry, it popped up and it says, if I do Pathway F and I want to submit the application, what is the fee for the online application and what's the testing fee? So for Pathway F through June 30th of 2021, we have waived the $150 application fee, and we have waived your first initial testing fee. So you only have to take and pass the one exam module A. So when you register, you're going to register for a window. There will be no fee for the application, no fee for the window, but you have to take the exam during that window. If you pass it, then there are no fees. If you're not successful, then there would be a retest fee of $100. And so for recertification, what if you don't teach anything? That's fine. You can earn all 36 of your contact hours through continuing education on the public policy, public procurement competency framework or the technical competencies. So it's not required that 25% be teaching and developing. You can earn all 36 with continuing education. Are there any other questions that you're seeing, Rick and Justin?
Yeah, there's a couple on, you know, one of the, I think one of the challenges that all of us face in public procurement is, you know, what's the best fit for me? Should I go the B or the O road? Should I go this route? Should I go get something that's more in the private sector that transitions to supply chain? You know, I think the issue is that this is all about choice. It is an opportunity if you are particularly or want to be in a leadership position. That's really the target for this program. It's that mid to executive level leader who wants to get a designation that indicates kind of a fuller representation of what you do every day. And so I don't think that, at least in the short term, that this is any replacement for individuals that have their O and B. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very proud that I have earned both of those designations and continue to recertify as long as I am, you know, an active employee. So I think rather than trying to determine that one is going to be equal or better or less than the other, I think it really depends on how you see your pathway in your career going. And again, if you're looking in that leadership, that's where you want to be, that I would encourage you to look at this program. If you are a buyer and you want to kind of stay in the technical aspects of it, then I think the CPP is really the ideal place for you to be. So it really depends on where you are on your journey. I know that, you know, the questions on recertification, one of the beauties of having this developed through NIGP is that your certification record is maintained with Diane and the certification team. There's a very clear firewall. Don't call me and ask me about certification issues, because I'm gonna send you to Diane and her team. I keep hands and eyes out of that area. But because they share the same database with the same firewalls, when you take NIGP classes, when you go to forum, when you're doing things with VCon, virtual conferences, all of those continuing education hours automatically get into your certification record. So you don't have to upload all of all those individual records at the time that you want to recertify. I do think that over the last year, Pathways has greatly expanded the new courses that are available. As a matter of fact, the foundation courses went away on July 1st. A whole new set of content is available for you. So if you're not familiar with that, I really would encourage you to look at the Pathways content. And then one last one, I cannot speak for the UPPCC on their certification and recertification requirements. As you hopefully know, the UPPCC is the independent body. They have their own board. They establish their own policies and practices. I can tell you that that any of the NIGP courses that are aligned with both the competency framework and also the UPPCC body of knowledge qualify for recertification in both categories. So that's kind of a two birds, one stone for you. So let me wrap this up. Just a final review of these key dates. For those who are current B or O certificants, of course, the optional digital guides, those are free. We have the digital prep courses will be available every 3 months. Remember, this happens after you apply for Pathway F and are approved. And at that point, then you will get the information on the guides and the courses. There will be 4 exam periods beginning next month in August, then in November, February, and then May will be the last exam period where there is no testing fee. After that May exam, then the next one is in August, and that's when you begin paying for the application and the testing fees. And keep in mind, in about 5 years, now 4 years, the bridge exam will end and it will go away. One gentleman asked me, you know, what about the CPSM designations? And again, as I explained a little bit earlier, you have to perform a fairly sophisticated gap analysis before you can offer a bridge exam. That's not to say that the Certification Commission would not entertain a bridge for CPSM. I know that the UPPCC did that back in 2012, 13, 14. So it's possible, but that's not been the top priority so far. And then if you're in the comprehensive exam, again, those guides are available through the NIGP bookstore at $150. We have the digital prep courses, those are available. These are optional to help you prepare. If you want to go that way, that's $395. The Pilot A, if you decide to take it during this pilot period of August 1st through the 15th of September, once you take that pilot, we will rebate for the Module A. It's important that you take it during that window, though, not just register, but actually go to the exam site. And if you do that and you take the exam, then the $100 rebate will come back to you. And then beginning August, November, and then the 4 periods in 2021, 2 modules that you would take, A and B, on the comprehensive. And then it's just, you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's about choice, just so that you kind of have a clear, and I'm doing a kind of a comparison of choice on the CPP and the CPPO. You can see that you have 6 optional pathways. Diane talked about those. So it's not necessarily only for people who have a bachelor's and advanced degrees, but if anyone's coming into the system without a degree, which there are quite a few very, very highly skilled and revered individuals in our profession that do not have a degree. And so this provides an option for them. There is no entry-level procurement training that's required. So when you go for your O, you've got to demonstrate 96 hours of training. That is not in the CPP at all. Certification Commission actually talked about this and it said, really, the proof of the pudding is not taking the training in advance, but passing the exam. You'll see that there's no deadlines, there's no late fees. The application is good for 2 years on the O. There are specific deadlines, and your application is only good for a year. By the way, this question did not come up, but a couple of people have called us about this. I am thinking about taking my O or B, and then I want to bridge to the CPP. Once I get my UPPCC certification. If that's the pathway you're on, it's really important that you take either your O or your B in that October 2020 timeframe. And by the way, the application deadline for that October is coming up next week. It's July 13th. So you'd want to apply by July 13th so that you can avoid the late fee. And then you can take your O and B in October, pass it successfully. You'll probably hear that result somewhere about late November. And then that gives you the May 2021 timeframe to take that free exam through Module B. Exam content, if this is competency based, it's what you do. It really is the full scope of the work that we do in public procurement. So it includes that leadership and business principles and strategy. It is a two-part as opposed to a single exam. Those are scored separately. There's 4 testing windows on the CPP2 and the CPPO, and 3 opportunities to pass each module. And with the O, because your application is only good for 1 year, you only have those 2 opportunities to pass the single exam. But NIGP continues to be fully committed to the UPPCC and its O and B program, the NIGP courses and pathways. They fully aligned with the UPPCC body of knowledge. We continue to offer the certification preps, the assessment tools, the flashcards, the study guides, the prep courses, all that's available. I should mention that all of our prep courses, just like all of our courses right now, are all virtual, instructor-led. We're not doing in person, at least through October of 2020 because of COVID. Certificants and to honor those who have already received their OMB, you have that abbreviated bridge through Pathway F. And then the recertification program for both OMB and for the NIGP-CPP, those learning programs meet the eligibility criteria. So there's our numbers, our email addresses. Of course, my name again is Rick Grimm, and I'm the Chief Executive. Diane Daly is the Certification Director. Todd Slater is our Chief Content Officer. So you have questions related to what specific classes should I take? That's really kind of a Todd question for you. And then let's just kind of wrap up on any final questions that you may have. Diane, what's the research fee for the CPP?
That is going to be $150.
$150, yeah. And by the way, there are no fee differences between being an NIGP member and not being an NIGP member. The fees are flat. The commission decided that because professional certification is so important that there's not a kind of a membership preference in this range. So all your fees are the same. And Justin, any other questions that are coming up that we should address?
I'm not seeing any, Rick.
Okay. So again, we're really grateful that you've spent this time. Listen, I know how difficult it has been for all of you, whether you're working in emergency centers, or you're trying to find PPEs. The world is a little bit different than than it was 6 months ago. So we're so grateful for the work that you do in public procurement, how you help your first responders. And we're grateful for you just taking this opportunity to kind of hear how this program evolves. Justin will send out the PowerPoints at some point in the near future. But it's really important. Let me just come back one final time in case you didn't get it. This should be the beginning of the conversation for you. So as you start thinking about questions, Diane is there for you. She has a team that's there for you to address it, because we realize certification is important, but it also can be complex and intimidating. And we just want to make sure we get the right questions answered for you. So please take advantage of Diane. Look at the certification handbook. It's very comprehensive. Again, it's an online resource. And then call us for any other questions. We're grateful for your time today. Thank you very much for joining us. By the way, we continue to offer this program on webinars. We are actually having a special webinar in 2 weeks. I think, Justin, that's on the 22nd of July. Of course, registration is free. That particular pathways is only for people who are certified CPPB and CPPO, because as you can see, there's an abbreviated process here. But we'll continue to offer these webinars as long as people are interested. We have, to date, about 1,600 NIGP members have signed up for these webinars that we have been giving since March. And so we're really grateful for your interest, and we really want to make sure that you understand all of your options, because you know what? It's all about choice. Thanks for being with us. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rick and Diane. I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar. Please take time to fill out the evaluation survey. A link containing the survey and a recording of this webinar will be emailed to everyone tomorrow. And as Rick mentioned, we have another webinar coming up on July 22nd. You can register directly at our website at nigp.org. Thanks again and have a great day.